What movie is a lot darker than people realize? The Incredibles. Attempted suicide. Lots of unseen collateral damage and possible civilian deaths. The systematic assassination of superheroes. All around The Incredibles is centered around some very heavy subject matter. On top of the superhero stuff like you mentioned. Asterisk infidelity. Asterisk mediocrity and the midlife crisis. Asterisk family struggles. Asterisk feminism versus the traditional housewife. Asterisk parents struggling with an ADHD child. Asterisk the impact of our actions over decades and how our past comes to haunt us. Asterisk dealing with corporate life and struggling with our capitalist system. There's so much going on that fly right over kids' heads because it's laid down subtly for adults. Such a great movie. Random fact about the movie I just recently learned. When Elastigirl borrows that jet which gets shot down, the original script actually had the guy in the photograph piloting the craft. We'd get backstory that he was actually her sidekick when she was in the business, flying her around to places to do her thing. They created the scene with her and the kids surviving before they made the decision not to include the character. So the part with her underwater looking as the cockpit sinks away actually had the deeper meaning that she was watching the corpse of a lifelong friend sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Lilo and Stitch. Nani is like 19, taking care of her little sister who has behavioral problems, while being investigated by CPS, on top of working and trying to pay for a whole house. Man, she also gave up what appeared to a promising surf career, judging by the trophies. Shrek. It shows how people have hatred for other people just because of the way they are. Religion, looks, race, culture, poverty. It has a good lesson that we should love everybody regardless of all the stupid goofy stuff. I don't have a problem with the world, donkey. It seems as if the world has a problem with me. Shrek. The second movie goes further too, with Shrek's own Phil trying to get rid of him because of a combination of a dislike for Shrek's race and being manipulated by the fairy godmother. Also, a lot of the citizens seem very alarmed by Shrek. Home Alone is about two adults trying to murder a child, or a psychopath trying to murder two adults. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's pretty dark. I read somewhere that he possibly suffers from narcissist personality disorder. For example, he wears clothes that stand out so he is always the center of attention. He dismisses questions when they are asked because he can't stand criticize Monsieur. He placed all those kids in danger with not a care in the world. There's a lot more examples. It's weird when you look back on these children's stories because you realize it goes a lot deeper. Just about everything that originated from the mind of Roald Dahl is pretty freaking dark at its core. My favorite fan theory is that Snowpiercer is actually a sequel to asterisk Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory asterisk. It's very dark. Wonka knew that the kids would disappear in some way. The boat from the tunnel scene only has seats for 8 guests in the vehicle at the end. I can't remember the name. Only has seats for 4. Monster Inc. They use screams of innocent children and might even scar them for life to have electricity. Let's not about how Randall the Vandal planned to kidnap children to suck their voice or something. Not to mention that Waternoose was willing to kidnap children just to keep his company afloat. Instead of investing in alternative energy, he decides to go out and harm another world. Sort of like a commentary on how we're destroying our own world because we won't simply adopt another energy source. WALL-E. We destroy the planet and ended up being obese space refugees who can't think? Sounds about right. Also, they're most likely cannibals since they mostly just drink these weird smoothies that could be literally anything. And somehow the population has stayed at a manageable size despite there being no obvious method of burial or cremation. Also, where would they be getting non-human food from? It's not like they have a whole lot of resources in space. Soylent Green is people. Didn't a scene from the movie show that when the Earth was evacuated, the whole planet was controlled by and large, A huge megacorporation literally bought the planet and then destroyed it in their mission to make as much money as possible. WALL-E is basically kid-friendly cyberpunk. Most Studio Ghibli movies, they're kids' movies with sometimes depressing or dark messages behind them. Monsieur Grave of the Fireflies is a prime example. Many kids cried when leaving the cinemas. It was a shock. I think people do realize how dark that is though. Zootopia. If you think about it, the carnivore animals have to be eating something, which means there are probably subservient animals hidden somewhere that are bred primarily for the carnivores to eat off of. Even ignoring that, the plots of the movie was surprisingly dark for a Disney movie. With that angry lamb, the original plot of the movie focused more on Nick and was dark as fuck. Zootopia existed, but it was run primarily by prey species which outnumbered the predators. Predators were legally required to wear shock collars which would trigger if the wearer got excited. And I think prey species could trigger them remotely as well. But I can't remember for sure. Nick's whole objective is to try and make a theme park where the predators can take off their collars and do things like roar on a loud roller coaster. All the banks are run by rodents and they won't give loans to predators. Even the nicest one in the montage they filmed basically said, "We'd love to give loans to predators. But since nobody has given you loans, you don't have a credit history, so we can't trust that you'll pay it back." A catch-22. So the reason Nick gets involved with the mafia is that he's basically given up. He figures, best case he gets his money. Second best case they kill him for daring to come to them for money. Either way his quest is over. And along the way, Judy's character basically exists to be a character that tries to justify that the predator protections were needed and good, while struggling to deal with the fact that they very clearly were horrible. All dogs go to heaven. That hellish pun intended dream sequence still freaks me out to this day. Snow White. Stepmother wants to murder 14-year-old girl because she is prettier than her. 14-year-old finds a random house in the woods, decides to clean it, lives as a servant of 7 men in exchange for a place to stay. A random prince finds a corpse in the woods, decides to kiss it, not to mention the prince was in his 30s. No, according to Disney, the prince was 15. He's just wearing 1930s stage makeup. Also, the bit about 7 grown-ass men acting like they've never washed their hands ever in their lives hits different in 2020. Return of the Jedi, or more specifically the Ewoks. Now I know what you're gonna say. Those stupid fuzzy little jungle bears were dumb in the worst part of the film. Maybe, but think about their introduction. They captured a much more highly advanced military party and were about to eat the monsieur. Did you see the stormtroopers' helmets at the end? Yeah, those weren't gifts. Those fuzzy little monsters caught and ate those poor bastards. Ewoks are a carnivorous race that considers humanoid flesh a delicacy. They prepare fires in anticipation of eating Han, Luke and Chewbacca to absorb their power. I doubt that they'd eat humans around other humans. Once we set up good relations with the monsieur, what you should be asking yourself is, why did the Ewoks have log traps ready to go that can hurt something the size of an Ant Saint? There are large carnivores on the planet the Ewoks have to hunt. The brave little toaster made the mistake of watching this movie on mushrooms. BC, I remember loving it as a kid. God damn, it gets dark. The whole worthless song, where cars are just being crushed to death and singing about it, was fucking brutal. How about the radiator who gets so mad about being stuck on the wall, while constantly in denial that it does bother him, that this is his life and there is nothing he can do about it, that he literally kills himself. I thought it was an air conditioning unit. Has been years since I've seen it though. Happy Feet took a weird and dark turn about 2/3 RDS of the way through when it switched to live action. In my head, Happy Feet and Surf Suffer like the same movie. What was the deal with 2006-07 and Penguin movies? I remember thinking the movie would end when he followed the boat, and then when he was stuck at the Zoo. But yeah, that part was dark. Can't believe no one has said anything about the Disney Pixar movie Up. Elderly man who has lost his wife to cancer being harassed by a big company who wants to tear down his home for new development. Young boy with divorced parents and an absentee father running around the streets of a city. Not to mention the deranged adventurer serial killer who has murdered anyone who may have come close to messing up his life's work. Game of Thrones Season 8 EP3. Not a movie, but still really dark. Great, thanks for reopening that wound. I woke up at 3 a.m. and paid for a VPN to watch this on a laptop. At first I thought the hotel Wi-Fi was shitty or computer sim settings were broken. Nope. Thor Ragnarok. Without the comedy. It's a very depressing, but still good, movie. Everything goes wrong and culminates with the destruction of his home. As far as I'm concerned, this is the first Thor movie, with Infinity War and Endgame making the trilogy. Seeing what he becomes in Endgame really hits home because I've known a few people who are just broken like that, and lose themselves to escapism through booze or other methods. I thought it was really great that not only was he still worthy, but he was able to swallow his pride and accept that there are others who are just as worthy as he is, and he should just live how he wants to be. In a way, though, that had to happen. Ultimately, the only way it could have been prevented was if Loki didn't throw Odin into a retirement home on Earth. But after that, there was no way Asgard could have continued to exist without Hela becoming so powerful she'd start waging genocide on the universe. Frozen 1. A child who was forced to suppress her emotions just so that the adults in the family felt like the situation is under their control. Conceive, don't feel. 2. Wealth is not the same as happiness. 3. The purest of pure and the kindest of kind PPL are the loneliest ones. 4. How Elsa is taught that being emotionally vulnerable is weak. Conceive, don't feel might be the best typo I've seen this week. And probably the most historically accurate. Even more so. Frozen 2. Elsa and Anna discover their direct paternal ancestors took advantage of an entire race of people for their own selfish gain. Kristoff struggles with loving someone who is emotionally unavailable due to current traumas. Anna loses her last living family member and yet is forced to carry on and reverse her family's tragic legacy, risking her own life to do so. Olaf is stuck in a position of a child dealing with the stresses adults around him are feeling and trying to understand it all through a veil of innocence. Inside Out for sure. It is intended to be a happy kids movie. Riley is a preteen that just moved to a new town, so there are a lot of emotions in her. Joy is actually the villain of the movie because she makes everything all happy and normal when there are other emotions that are normal to face like sadness, disgust, anger and fear. The darkest part of the film was when Riley's imaginary friend who she forgot about named Bing Bong died and faded away. A lot of other things happened, like Joy breaking down in the dump and when Riley said she missed her home. Amazing movie, but it's darker than shown to be. Like fuck is it darker than people realize. Everyone knows it's a pretty dark movie, but it shows the necessary emotions a child may go through after having a huge dramatic change in their lives. Riley tries as hard as possible to be happy and find joy, but eventually has to give in to her sadness to process it healthily. Pixar didn't try to hide this aspect of the movie at all. It's the actual plot. Yeah, I walked out of it explaining to two small children that Riley was experiencing depression because her sadness was stuffed away by a perceived need to appear happy. Bing Bong still has me fucked up. Something I found profound was at the very end when Riley's new memories are made with mixed emotions. It's perfectly human to be happy and sad at the same time, or sad and angry or happy and angry, etc. Understanding that you can process different emotions at the same time is important in maintaining proper mental health. Not everything makes sense and that's okay. That movie actually helped me realize that I have depression. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.